I awoke with a gasp, the phantom sting of a needle still fresh in my neck. The air smelled of sterilized metal and old coffee, a scent I hadn't known for a decade. My eyes snapped open, not to the grimy brick of an alleyway, but to the familiar white acoustic tiles of my university research lab. Sunlight streamed through the large window, illuminating dust motes dancing over schematics I thought were long lost. My hands, they weren't scarred and trembling from months of living on the run. They were steady, clean, resting on a keyboard connected to a monitor displaying a date that made my heart stop. October 12, 2025. 10 years. I had traveled back 10 years. I stumbled out of my chair, my reflection in the dark monitor showing a younger man, one without the haunted look in his eyes, one whose jet black hair wasn't yet flecked with gray from stress. The memories, however, were not young. They were sharp, brutal shards of a future that had been stolen from me. Alara. Her name was a curse on my tongue. Her silver hair shimmering under a streetlight. Her emerald eyes, so full of feigned adoration. The final memory, the most vivid one, her hand holding the syringe, her voice a cold whisper. Omnicorp thanks you for your contribution, Aris. My life's work, the culmination of my genius, self-replicating nanites capable of cellular-level regeneration, twisted into a weapon and then used to discard me like a piece of faulty equipment. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, echoing in the quiet lab. They left me to die, thinking the story was over. But I got an epilogue. Or rather, a new prologue. I checked my calendar. Today was the annual Global Tech Symposium. The day I met her. The day my downfall began. In the original timeline, I was a nervous, socially awkward scientist, completely swept off my feet by a stunning woman who showed an impossibly keen interest in my niche field of study. I was a lamb to the slaughter. This time, the shepherd would be the one getting fleeced. A cold, calculating calm settled over me. My grief had burned away in the temporal jump, leaving only the hard, unyielding diamond of purpose. I wasn't just going to prevent her from stealing my research. Oh no, that was far too simple. I was going to play her game, but with the rules of a decade's worth of foreknowledge. I would make her believe she was winning, let her report back to her masters at Omnicorp, and feed her a stream of poisoned data so elegant, so beautifully flawed, it would rot their entire infrastructure from the inside out. And her? I would make her fall in love with the man I was pretending to be. I would become her entire world. And when she was completely, irrevocably mine, I would force her to watch as I dismantled everything she ever worked for, brick by worthless brick. Revenge wasn't enough. I wanted retribution. The symposium hall was a cacophony of ambitious chatter and the low hum of bleeding-edge technology. Last time, I had felt like an imposter here, a quiet lab rat thrown into a shark tank. This time, I felt like the shark. I moved through the crowd with a confidence that was entirely new, my eyes scanning the room, not with awe, but with the precision of a predator. And then I saw her. Alara. She was standing by a holographic display, a vision in a sleek, dark green dress that perfectly complemented her emerald eyes. Her long, silver hair was a beacon in the dimly lit hall. She exuded an aura of sophisticated grace, her gaze sweeping the room with a practiced, analytical air that I now recognized as professional surveillance. She was hunting, and I was her target. Just like before, her eyes eventually found me, and she offered a small, curious smile. In the first timeline, I had blushed and looked away, only for her to make the first move later, feigning a clumsy yet charming spill of her drink near my presentation. Not this time. I held her gaze, a faint, knowing smile playing on my own lips. I walked directly towards her, my path cutting through the crowd with an unwavering purpose that made others instinctively part. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, her professional poise momentarily rattled by my directness. "You seem to be looking for something," I said, my voice smooth and steady, a stark contrast to the stammering wreck I'd been 10 years ago. "More like someone," she replied, recovering instantly, her voice like honeyed silk. "I have a passion for disruptive technology. And I'm told the most disruptive mind here belongs to a Dr. Aris Thorne." "Flattery is a common currency here," I countered, stopping just close enough to see the flicker of calculation in her eyes. "But you don't strike me as someone who deals in common currency." I watched as she processed that, her mask of a charming art historian not quite fitting this new script. "You're right," she conceded, a glint of genuine interest now mixing with her feigned curiosity. "I'm interested in potential. True potential. Your work on cellular regeneration nanites, it's more than just medicine. It could redefine the very concept of human limitation." She was quoting from the mission brief OmniCorp had undoubtedly given her. Last time, I had eagerly launched into a passionate, jargon-filled explanation, handing her the keys to the kingdom on a silver platter. This time, I simply nodded. "It could," I said, my tone deliberately vague. "But potential is a dangerous thing. In the wrong hands, a cure can become a weapon. The same technology that can mend a heart could be programmed to stop one." I saw it then, a micro-expression of shock. I had just articulated the very core of OmniCorp's malevolent interest in my work. It was a direct, albeit veiled, challenge. I was telling her, "I see you." To her, it must have sounded like a stroke of paranoid genius, a brilliant mind already considering the dark implications of his creation. "That's a profound concern, Doctor," she said, her voice a little less smooth. "It's the only one that matters," I replied, before giving her a charming, disarming smile. "But I'm sure a savvy art historian such as yourself is more interested in the beauty of creation, not its destruction." I had laid the first piece of bait. I showed her I was not the naive fool she expected. I was brilliant, cautious, and perhaps a little paranoid. I had just made her mission exponentially more difficult, and in doing so, exponentially more interesting for a woman who thrived on challenge. She wasn't just a spy trying to dupe a scientist anymore. She was a grand master of espionage who had just met a worthy opponent. The game had begun. Our courtship, if you could call it that, began as a meticulously choreographed dance of deception. She would suggest a coffee to pick my brain, and I would agree, playing the part of the slightly distracted genius, flattered by her attention. I'd sketch out complex formulas on napkins, carefully omitting key variables, watching as she subtly angled her phone to capture a photo when she thought I wasn't looking. Every piece of information I gave her was a carefully crafted lie wrapped in a layer of truth. I led her down a rabbit hole of research into neuroregenerative bridging, a field I'd completely fabricated. The data I provided was internally consistent, brilliant on the surface, and utterly, fundamentally flawed in a way that only I understood. It was a technological Trojan horse. OmniCorp's top minds would spend months, maybe years, trying to replicate impossible results, burning through funding and chasing ghosts. All while their real competition, the future me, was already light years ahead. I set up a private server for my sensitive research data, and within a week, I detected the digital intrusion. It was her, of course. Her technique was flawless, ghost-like. She'd left no trace that a normal security scan would ever find. But I wasn't looking with normal tools. I was looking with the knowledge of a man who had already seen the enemy's playbook. I didn't block her access. Instead, I curated her experience. I created a special partition on the server, a gilded cage of false breakthroughs and doctored progress reports. I made her feel like she was the world's greatest spy, uncovering the most valuable secrets of the 21st century. She was feeding OmniCorp exactly what they wanted to hear, that their target was brilliant, arrogant, and careless with his data security. Meanwhile, I was the one watching her. I bugged the burner phone she used to contact her handler. Listening to their coded conversations became my evening ritual. Her handler, a man she called Valerius, was arrogant and demanding. He pushed her for more, for the core source code, for the final piece of the puzzle. "He's getting attached, Director," I heard her say one night, her voice a clinical assessment. "His emotional state is a vulnerability we can exploit." It sent a chill down my spine, a ghost of the man I used to be, the man who had his heart carved out by that exact sentiment. But this Aris, the man I was now, just smiled grimly in the darkness of his lab. Let her think that, asterisk I thought. Let them all think that. I was building a house of cards for OmniCorp, and Alara was my unwitting architect. Every stolen file she uploaded to their servers contained dormant logic bombs, hidden lines of code that would lie in wait. They were my digital sleeper agents, waiting for the signal to activate and cripple their entire network. The irony was delicious. They thought they were stealing my weapon. I was using their theft as the delivery mechanism for my own. The trap was being set, piece by meticulous piece. All I had to do was keep playing my part. The smitten, lovelorn fool. It was a role I knew all too well. To destroy her empire, I first had to conquer her heart. This was the most dangerous part of the plan, the part where the lines could blur, where the ghost of my past affection could rise up and haunt me. I had to make her see a man worth betraying her entire life for. So, I began to weave a new narrative for us, one built on carefully constructed moments of vulnerability and manufactured connection. I took her to the observatory on campus one night, under a blanket of stars. Instead of talking about science, I told her a story I'd invented about my childhood, about a fictional younger sister who had died from a rare genetic disorder, and how she was my inspiration for wanting to cure the incurable. The story was a lie, but the emotion I poured into it was real. It was the grief I felt for my own stolen future. I watched her face in the starlight, saw her professional mask soften, her emerald eyes filled with a sympathy she hadn't intended to feel. For the first time, she saw Ara's thorn not as a target, but as a man with a wounded soul. Another time, we were working late in my lab. I deliberately failed an experiment, slumping over the console in feigned exhaustion and frustration. She placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that was likely planned, a standard tactic for building rapport. "You can't save the world in one day, Aris," she said softly. I turned to her, my expression one of carefully rehearsed despair. "But what if I'm not smart enough? What if all this potential is just potential? And I can't make it real?" I asked, channeling all the insecurity the original me had felt. She didn't have a scripted answer for that. She looked at me, her guard completely down for a fleeting moment. "You're the most brilliant person I've ever met," she said, and I could hear the unnerving ring of truth in her voice. Her mission was to get close to me, but she had never anticipated that getting close would feel like this. I was showing her a man who wasn't just a genius, but a human being, flawed and passionate. The ultimate honey trap wasn't just physical, it was emotional. I made her laugh with my dry, academic wit. I cooked for her in my small apartment, a disastrous but endearing attempt that ended with us ordering pizza and eating on the floor surrounded by schematics. I remembered the things she liked, the obscure art history books she'd mentioned, the type of tea she preferred. These were the details the old me had cherished, but the new me deployed them as strategic weapons. I could see the war raging within her. Each report she filed with Valerius must have become a little harder to write. How do you clinically describe the emotional state of a target when you're becoming a part of it? She was a spy, trained to manipulate and deceive, but she was still human. I was systematically breaking down her defenses, not with logic or force, but with a counterfeit love so convincing that even she was beginning to believe it was real. And the most terrifying part? Sometimes when she smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile, I had to remind myself that I was acting too. The first cracks in her professional facade began to appear subtly. It started during her calls with Valerius. Her reports, which I monitored religiously, shifted in tone. They were less clinical, more defensive. "The subject is unusually cautious about the weaponization potential," she reported one evening, her voice tight. "He seems solely focused on humanitarian applications. He calls it the Prometheus Project." The Prometheus Project was another of my inventions, a lie designed to appeal to the part of her I hoped still existed. I drafted a proposal for a non-profit initiative to use my nanites to cure a rare degenerative disease that primarily affected children in developing nations. The data was compelling, the cause unimpeachable. It was the polar opposite of Omnicorp's agenda. "Forget the project," Valerius's voice crackled back, impatient and dismissive. "The application is irrelevant. We need the core replication algorithm. Are you getting it or not?" There was a pause. "I'm close," Alara said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "His personal firewalls are complex. It's tied to his emotional state. Pushing too hard could make him shut down completely." She was protecting me. She was buying me time, inventing excuses for her lack of progress on the one thing Valerius truly wanted. The next phase of my plan involved a breakthrough. I let her discover a file on my server detailing how the nanites could be used to target and destroy specific cancer cells with zero collateral damage. The data was real, a piece of the original work I was most proud of. I attached a personal log to it, filled with my feigned excitement. "This could save millions," I wrote. "This is what it's all for." A day later, I listened as Valerius instructed her to immediately transfer the data. "This is it," he'd said, practically drooling over the potential profit. "We can patent the process. Corner the entire oncology market." But Alara hesitated. "The file is encrypted with a biometric failsafe," she lied, her voice steady. "It seems to require his physical presence to decrypt fully. If I try to force it, the data will corrupt." It was a brilliant fabrication on her part. She was actively sabotaging her own mission. The spy sent to steal my work was now shielding it. The conflict was becoming etched on her face. I saw it in the moments she thought I wasn't looking, a distant, troubled expression in her emerald eyes. She was caught between the cold, corporate nihilism of her employers and the hopeful, life-affirming world I was building around her. She had been sent to dissect a machine, but she'd found a man, and it was breaking her programming. This was the leverage I needed. Her loyalty to Omnicorp was wavering. She was starting to believe in the dream I was selling her. Now, it was time to turn her into a double agent. All it would take was one final, terrifying push to show her the true nature of the monsters she worked for. And I knew just how to arrange it. It was time to give the masters at Omnicorp a taste of their own medicine. For months, they had been pouring billions of dollars into their flagship project, codenamed Chimera, based entirely on the poisoned research Alara had been feeding them. According to the stolen data, Chimera was a revolutionary nanite-based manufacturing process, capable of creating flawless microprocessors at an atomic level. In reality, it was a time bomb. The core of the fabricated science relied on a specific resonant frequency to stabilize the nanite assemblers. My Trojan horse code had instructed them to build their entire manufacturing plant, a massive, gleaming facility in the Nevada desert, around this one critical frequency. But I had included a backdoor, a hidden counter frequency that, when broadcast, would cause the entire system to collapse catastrophically. From my small apartment, using a secure, untraceable satellite link, I typed a single line of code. I hit enter. Thousands of miles away, every nanite in the Chimera facility shuddered. The resonant frequency that held them stable was instantly cancelled out. The result was a cascading chain reaction of entropic failure. Atomic bonds dissolved. Flawless silicon wafers turned to dust. The delicate machinery, assembled with impossible precision, simply fell apart. The news broke within the hour. "Unprecedented industrial disaster at Omnicorp's new facility," the headlines screamed. The stock market reacted with brutal efficiency. Omnicorp's value plummeted by 40% in a single day, erasing billions in shareholder wealth. It was a public, spectacular, and utterly humiliating failure. I listened to the bugged call between Alara and a furious director Valerius. "What happened?" he roared, his voice devoid of its usual cold composure. "The science was perfect. Your intelligence was flawless." "I don't know," Alara stammered, clearly in shock. "The data was triple-checked by our top analysts. It should have worked. This wasn't a miscalculation," Valerius bellowed. "This was sabotage. Someone knew. Someone targeted us. Re-examine the source. Re-examine Thorne. Dig into every aspect of his life. I want to know what he had for breakfast. I don't care what it takes." The paranoia was setting in. His arrogance wouldn't let him believe that his prized asset, Alara, had been duped, or that the quiet scientist was capable of such a thing. He would blame a rival corporation, an inside man, anyone but the real cause. This was perfect. Omnicorp was bleeding, and they were turning on each other. But Valerius's final command gave me the opening for the next phase of my plan. He wanted Alara to dig deeper into my life. He wanted her to get closer. And when she did, I was going to make sure she found exactly what I wanted her to find, a reason to be terrified not of me, but of her own employers. The first strike had crippled their finances. The next would steal their most valuable weapon, Alara herself. With Omnicorp in chaos and Valerius demanding answers, the pressure on Alara was immense. I knew she would be watching me more closely than ever, searching for any hint of deception. It was time to stage the final act of my manipulation. I needed to make her believe that Omnicorp was no longer just targeting my research, but me personally. I hired a discreet, off-the-books security consultant, a former intelligence operative I'd vetted through back channels. His instructions were simple: stage a failed, but terrifyingly convincing, assassination attempt on me. It happened on a rainy Tuesday night as I was walking home from the lab. A black sedan screeched around the corner, its headlights pinning me against the wet brick wall of an alley. A masked figure emerged from the passenger side, raising a silenced pistol. As planned, my hired consultant, posing as a random bystander, intervened. A scuffle, a shouted warning, the clatter of the gun on the pavement, and the sedan sped off into the night. It was all over in 30 seconds. I knew Alara would be watching. She often tailed me on my way home, a fact I'd known for months. I saw her silhouette melt back into the shadows of a doorway across the street, her posture radiating shock and alarm. I let myself be questioned by the police, playing the part of a shaken, bewildered victim with no idea who would want to harm him. The next evening, Alara came to my apartment. Her usual poise was gone, replaced by a raw, frantic energy. "Aris, we need to talk," she said, her emerald eyes wide with fear. I led her inside, my hand trembling, as I locked the door behind her. "They tried to kill me, Alara," I whispered, letting my voice break. "Who? Did you see who it was?" she asked, her questions part of her protocol but her concern feeling dangerously real. This was my moment. I opened my laptop and showed her a file I had prepared. It was a dossier, expertly faked, detailing Omnicorp's history of asset removal. It included incident reports of rival scientists dying in unfortunate accidents, of whistleblowers disappearing without a trace. The final page was a profile. On me. It was marked with a single, chilling directive: terminate upon completion of technology transfer. "I've been digging," I lied, my voice filled with manufactured terror. "Ever since you started asking about the weaponization potential, I got scared. I hired a private investigator. He found this. It's your employer, Alara. They're not just trying to steal my work. They're going to eliminate me once they have it." I then turned and looked her directly in the eyes, my own filled with a carefully crafted mix of fear and betrayal. "And what do you think they'll do to you, their disposable spy, once you're no longer needed? After you've served your purpose?" I let the question hang in the air between us. I had laid all the cards on the table. I showed her a future where her employers would discard her as readily as they would me. I had painted them as the monsters and me as the victim. Her face paled, the blood draining from it as she processed the horrifying implication. The lie I presented was more believable than the complex, unbelievable truth. "They wouldn't," she whispered, but her voice held no conviction. "Wouldn't they?" I pressed, my voice soft but relentless. "Look at what they do, Alara. Look at what they asked you to do. You have a choice. You can be their pawn and wait for them to remove you from the board. Or you can help me, and we can be free." The choice was hers. Her life as a spy, or a new life with me. Her entire world hinged on her next words. The silence in my apartment was a tangible thing, heavy with the weight of her decision. Alara stood frozen, the fabricated dossier glowing on my laptop screen, illuminating the war in her eyes. I could see the years of training, the ingrained loyalty to her mission, battling against the genuine fear and the affection she now felt for me. She had been sent to play a role, but the lines had blurred, and the stage had become her reality. Omnicorp was a faceless, ruthless entity that saw her as a tool. I was the man who remembered she liked Earl Grey tea, the one who made her laugh, the one who was now, in her mind, in mortal danger because of her. Her hand went to a small locket she always wore around her neck, a nervous habit I'd noticed. "Valerius, he promised me," she began, her voice barely a whisper, as if trying to convince herself. "He said this was my last assignment. A way out. There is no out with people like that, Alara," I said gently, stepping closer. "Only a leash. They'll never let someone with your skills and your knowledge just walk away. You know that." She looked from the dossier to my face, searching for any sign of deception. All she found was the earnest, terrified man I was pretending to be. Finally, she closed her eyes and took a deep, shuddering breath. When she opened them again, the conflict was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve I had only seen in her when she was deep in her espionage persona. But this time, it was aimed at a new target. "You're right," she said, her voice clear and strong. "They will kill us both." A wave of relief, so potent it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. She had made her choice. The spy had turned. What they don't know, she continued, her mind already shifting from target to ally, is that I built my own backdoors into their system. Insurance policies. Ways to protect myself. She pulled out her burner phone, the one she used to contact Valerius, and snapped it in half with her bare hands. It was a symbolic act of severing her past. For the last year, OmniCorp has been consolidating all of its sensitive data onto a single, isolated central server at their headquarters in Geneva, she explained, her tone all business. Physical access is next to impossible, but I know the security protocols. I know the patrol schedules, the blind spots in the surveillance. And I have the executive-level encryption keys. She was handing me the keys to the kingdom. Not the fake one I had built for her, but the real one. The information she possessed was a treasure trove. The names of corrupt government officials on OmniCorp's payroll. The illegal human trials they'd conducted. The blackmail material they held over corporate rivals. And most importantly, the location of the original, untainted data of my life's work, which they had stolen in the original timeline. If we combine my knowledge of their security with your technical skills, she said, a dangerous light gleaming in her emerald eyes, we can do more than just escape. We can burn them to the ground. My plan had worked better than I could have ever imagined. I hadn't just gained an asset. I had gained a partner. A brilliant, deadly partner who was now just as invested in OmniCorp's destruction as I was. Tell me everything you know, I said, a genuine, predatory smile finally gracing my lips. The game had changed. It was no longer just my revenge. It was ours. The next 2 weeks were a blur of intense, sleepless collaboration. My apartment became our command center, the walls covered in blueprints of OmniCorp's Geneva headquarters, network diagrams, and timelines. The dynamic between us shifted. We were no longer the love-struck scientist and the manipulative spy. We were two professionals, two experts in our respective fields, united by a common goal. Her knowledge of espionage was breathtaking. She knew the psychological profiles of every key security officer, the precise duration of sensor sweeps, the weaknesses in their biometric scanners. She taught me how to move, how to think like a ghost. In return, I crafted the digital skeleton keys she needed. I designed a custom-built device, no larger than a credit card, that would spoof her biometrics and grant her access to the server room. I wrote a virus, elegant and lethal, that would simultaneously copy all the data from their central server to an offshore account while erasing the originals, using a cascading wipe that would also physically fry the server's motherboards. We had one shot at this. Failure meant disappearing into an OmniCorp black site for the rest of our short lives. The trust between us was fragile, born of mutual necessity rather than genuine faith, but it was enough. We flew to Geneva under false identities. The night of the heist, the air crackled with tension. We stood on a hill overlooking the OmniCorp Tower, a gleaming monolith of glass and steel, a monument to corporate greed. Nervous? She asked, her face partially hidden by the collar of her black tactical suit. Beyond terrified, I admitted, my heart hammering against my ribs. But not of this. I'm terrified of what comes after. She gave me a long, unreadable look in the darkness. Let's get through tonight first. She breached the perimeter with a grace that was almost supernatural. I remained in our van, acting as her eyes and ears, guiding her through the labyrinthine corridors via a secure audio link, my fingers flying across 3 different laptops. Guard patrol, 30 seconds from your position, heading east, I'd whisper. And she would melt into an alcove, becoming one with the shadows. She navigated laser grids, bypassed pressure plates, and disabled cameras with a calm efficiency that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Finally, she reached the server room. I'm in, she breathed, her voice tight with adrenaline. I watched through the feed of a micro camera on her collar as she slid my custom device into the server's maintenance port. Green lines of code scrolled across my screen. The virus was in. It's working, I said, my voice filled with disbelief. Data transfer initiated. 10%, 20%. Suddenly, red alarms blared through the facility. Silent alarm tripped. A voice shouted over her earpiece. They know I'm here. The door is locking. The transfer is only at 40%. I yelled back, panic seizing me. You have to get out of there. There's no time, she said, her voice impossibly calm. I'm overriding the failsafe. Accelerating the data wipe. It will destroy the server, but it will buy me the seconds I need to escape through the maintenance shaft. Override will cause a power surge. It could ignite the coolant systems. I protested. Goodbye, Aris, she said softly. Then, the line went dead. And from my vantage point on the hill, I saw the top floors of the OmniCorp tower erupt in a flash of white light. For a horrifying minute, I thought she was gone. The explosion was contained by the building's safety measures, but the damage was done. My screen showed the data transfer had completed just seconds before the connection was severed. The data was secure. OmniCorp's central nervous system was fried. But Alara. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic, painful rhythm. I was about to breach protocol and race towards the tower when my comms crackled back to life. Took you long enough to worry, her voice, raspy with smoke and exertion, came through. I'm out. Extraction point C 30 minutes. The relief was so overwhelming it left me lightheaded. She had done it. We had done it. The next morning, the world woke up to the biggest corporate scandal in history. I had already leaked the entire OmniCorp data cache to every major news network and government agency on the planet. The revelations were catastrophic for them. Illegal weapon sales, political assassinations, medical data manipulation, bribery on a global scale. Director Valerius was arrested on his private jet trying to flee the country. The board of directors turned on each other, and OmniCorp, the titan of industry, crumbled into dust within 48 hours. It was over. My revenge was complete. I had reclaimed my research, my name, and my future. A week later, I found Alara on the balcony of a safe house in a quiet coastal town. She was staring out at the ocean, the wind playing with her silver hair. We stood in silence for a long time, the empire we had destroyed already a fading memory. What now? She asked, not looking at me. The Prometheus project, I said. I wasn't lying about that. I want to build it. Use the nanites for what I originally intended. To heal people. I turned to her, my carefully constructed persona, my mission of revenge, finally falling away, leaving just me. I started this for revenge, I confessed, my voice quiet. I was going to use you, make you fall for me, and then destroy you along with them. That was the plan. She finally turned her head, her emerald eyes meeting mine. They held no surprise, only a deep, weary understanding. I know, she said simply. I was a spy, Aris. I knew you were playing a game. I just didn't know your rules were better than mine. Somewhere along the way, I continued, the words feeling heavy and true, the acting it stopped feeling like acting. The person I pretended to be with you, he was a better man than the one who wanted revenge. I had sought to destroy her, but in the process, she had inadvertently saved me from the bitterness that was consuming me. You are not the woman OmniCorp tried to make you, I said. And I'm not the man they left for dead. We have a choice. A real one this time. I held out my hand. Help me build something new. For good. She looked at my outstretched hand, then back to my face, a long, searching gaze. A small, genuine smile, the first I'd seen since this all began, touched her lips. She didn't take my hand. Instead, she stepped forward and stood beside me, our shoulders almost touching as we looked out at the horizon together. Okay, Aris, she said. Let's save the world. Our future was unwritten, a blank page after a story of fire and deceit. But for the first time, it was ours to write.